Welcome into Off the Hook Sports, everybody. I am your host, Caleb Calhoun. We've got a lot to get to today. The SEC releases schedules for 2026 through 2029, at least the opponents. We're going to talk about that. The Jeff Lebby, Josh Heupel connection. Who benefits more from it? That'll be a question to answer. 5 key Vols to watch for against Mississippi State. Danny White talks about home and homes in the future. What does that mean going forward? Also, a couple of newsy things that happened that we got to get to because Mike Gundy has been fired, and we're going to look back on when Tennessee almost hired him. They went after him twice, and also John Mateer had surgery on his throwing hand. A big shock. How does that affect Tennessee, and how does that affect just the state of the SEC? I hate stories like this. We're going to get to that. So hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. We broadcast live every weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. And although we are still without Dave, we hope to have him back soon. I'm not alone today, guys, because it is Wednesday, and that means it is Wednesday with Jimmy Hyams. Bringing him in. How you doing, Jimmy?
I'm doing fine, Caleb. How are you?
I am pretty good. Before we dive in, you were obviously very tied to two of the SEC coaching searches. How lucky is Tennessee that Mike Gundy rejected them in 2017 now?
Very. Yeah, very. I know they went after him, and I know Peyton Manning had helped arrange the meeting with Tennessee and Mike Gundy, and Gundy ended up parlaying that into a better contract at Oklahoma State. But he's lost his way, and he's had the inability to bring in players in the transfer portal. He's lost players in the portal. It's hard for me to imagine Oklahoma State doesn't have money with Boone Pickens there, but apparently he didn't, and then he's been popping off about how he doesn't have money and Oregon does. So Oregon scored 69 on him, just to say, yeah, we spend our money wisely. So yeah, it would have been a failure at Tennessee. I think Tennessee is very fortunate right now to have a guy like Josh Heupel after they had several swing and misses, which included Dooley and Jones and Pruitt.
I totally agree. And the thing is, Gundy, they wouldn't have been able to move on from him as quickly because I think he would have had some modicum of success the first 3 years. So they might have been stuck with him through about the mid-2020s had they hired him. And that's the worst, isn't it? When you hire a coach and he doesn't do enough to get fired and then you're stuck with him for a period of time before you have to pull the trigger.
Yeah, fortunately, Tennessee had some coaches that did enough to get him fired. So they ended up with Heupel.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get rolling with the Vol Report. It's brought to you by Hometown Realty LLC. Go to ryancoleman.org, Knoxville's best from 2017 to 2022. Download the app, get instant updates, personalized searches, and more. That's ryancoleman.org, ryancoleman.org. And it's based on the news that came yesterday, which, as we now know, Jimmy, we know Tennessee's schedule, at least their SEC opponents, for the next 4 years, 2026 through 2029. We learned on Monday that their permanent SEC rivals will be Alabama, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt. So the SEC leaned more towards history than they did magnitude of games. But the standout to me is 2026. The other 6 opponents they're going to play are Auburn, LSU, Texas, Arkansas, South Carolina, and Texas A&M. Now, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, and Texas are all at home in 2026. Jimmy, I'm going to ask you up front, and this is the Vol Report, again, brought to you by Hometown Realty LLC. Is that the best SEC home slate you have ever seen since you've been covering Tennessee?
Yes, absolutely. And there have been years where, for example, Tennessee would play at home against Florida and Alabama, and then maybe have one other pretty good home SEC opponent, maybe. But now with the expansion to 16 teams, and now with the league as deep as it is, because Vanderbilt's not an easy out. Kentucky's an easier out than it used to be, but there are a lot of outstanding teams in this league. And so I don't think anybody in the league has an easy schedule. But I'll say this, the fact that Tennessee's got such an attractive home schedule, in my opinion, it's about time. Because I think if you're going to ask fans to donate for the right to buy tickets, and the tickets are very expensive, then you need to give them a better product on the field than playing a bunch of teams that would be like ETSU and UAB. So I like this from the fans' perspective. I would imagine Josh Heupel's not too excited about this, but I think it's an incredibly attractive home schedule for Tennessee.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess, maybe it somewhat justifies what we now know as a overall conglomerate 14% ticket price increase for 2026, or do you still think that's too much?
I think it's too much. I would think what you're doing is you're pricing out a lot of your average income fans, which by the way, the NFL has done. So I think it hurts in that respect. And having said that, I'm told that Tennessee has a waiting list of thousands of people wanting to get season tickets. So, yeah, I guess I could be wrong with that, but it just seems like if you're a family of four with a moderate income and you want to go to a football game, it's going to cost you over $1,000. It costs you at least $200 for the tickets, and then you got parking, and then you got concessions. That's not easy for a lot of folks. And then if coming from out of town, you got overnight stay. So that gets pretty expensive for the average income family. It's tough on them, but Caleb, Tennessee's not the only one doing it.
No, they're not. And actually, there is it's overall, it's not just college football. There's a societal problem right now where everything that's being done is being done on a luxury front. So basically, either you can afford the luxury. There's a lot of people that can afford the luxury, but there's nobody that can afford it elsewhere. It's the same in housing right now, too. So I think Tennessee's just following.
Yeah, and the same if you want to go see a concert.
Yeah.
You want to go see a really good artist, and it's going to cost you a ton of money. Maybe it's the Eagles, which I went to see a few years ago. Maybe it's Travis Kelce's engaged, soon to be married wife, the Swifties. So it just costs a lot of money now to do a lot of those things like that in the entertainment world, which I kind of think is a shame, because I think those folks are making enough money to where you shouldn't be having to gouge the average income family.
No, I totally agree. Totally agree. So to the point of the schedule. So we look at the schedule next year. Obviously, Alabama, Auburn, LSU, and Texas at home, and Kentucky. You're right. It's not like the road is going to be any easier. Arkansas and South Carolina. I mean, Arkansas just beat Tennessee and Arkansas last year, and Texas A&M won't be an easy out, and neither will Vanderbilt. Jimmy, and Tennessee still has Georgia Tech as a non-conference game, and Georgia Tech, they're a really good program at this point. That 9th SEC game, doesn't it just make the schedule look a lot more brutal? And I feel like Greg Sankey's taken such a risk because he didn't get anything in writing that the College Football Playoff Selection Committee is going to value schedule strength, given what they did last year. It almost seems like a handshake agreement he got with them before he went to 9 games, doesn't it?
I don't know what kind of agreement they have. I know the committee has indicated, and by the way, there's a media guy on the committee for the first time, Ivan Mizell, who very much is in favor of weighting the strength of schedule. But I guess I don't know if it's a chairman or somebody with the College Football Playoff Committee assured Swanky and the SEC that they were going to put a lot more emphasis. I've seen it in writing what they said they were going to do about how they won't penalize you as much losing, in particular on the road, to a highly ranked team. And boy, they'll blast you if you lose to a bad team, like if you lose to a UAB type team. But I've read what they have said in writing. I don't know about that. But if they, I will say this too, and I may be wrong, and I've heard, well, if Tennessee goes 9-3, they're not going to make the playoff. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't bet on any team at 9-3 not making the playoff, because we have shifts. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but just because a 9-3 team didn't make it last year doesn't mean a 9-3 team won't make it this year. We'll see. And that gets back to kind of what you're saying. How much are they actually going to weigh strength of schedule? And having said that, every one of those 9-3 teams have themselves to blame. I mean, Alabama lost to Vanderbilt, and then Ole Miss went to Florida when Florida was, not very good, and lost to Florida. Well, Florida got it turned around late. And Tennessee lost to Arkansas. I'm sorry, not Tennessee. There was another. South Carolina had a game, I guess it lost. But every one of them had a game they lost they should have won. And if they were 10-2, they'd have been in. But getting back to this, I do think if you're 9-3 with a very good strength of schedule, you got a chance to get in, because we don't know what everybody else is going to be doing.
Right, I agree. And I just think looking at it next year, I think the path to 10-2 with a 9-game SEC schedule and a game like Georgia Tech in non-conference, the path to 10-2 is like the path to 11-0 was in the 90s. Now, isn't it in the SEC?
Yeah, pretty much. It is strong. This league is, and of course they've invested and they've got really good coaches at a lot of these schools, no doubt about that. But what's happened is some of the teams that were like bottom feeders. Vanderbilt is a much better team right now, and they're not only going to have Diego Pavia for. Won't have him after this year, at least that's what he says. But I think Clark Lee's done a really good job of assembling some talent. I don't think Mississippi State stays down long with Jeff Lebby. Has been a surprise. I remember doing a radio show in Jacksonville with a buddy of mine, and he said they never should let Missouri in. Missouri will never have an impact on football in the SEC. And then the next 2 years they played in the SEC championship game. So, and Eli Drinkwitz has got it going. I mean, he's going to win. I think he's going to win 10 games again this year, like he's done the last couple of years. He's done that. Very solid program. So this league is just brutal, top to bottom. And my opinion is that they don't have the great team like Georgia in 21 and 22 or Alabama in 2020. But they have some outstanding teams, but not great elite teams. But man, the balance in this league, the bottom teams are a whole lot better than they used to be. And then, of course, when you added Oklahoma and Texas, Oklahoma had a down year last year, but they're outstanding this year. This league is absolutely brutal. Absolutely. And there's not a team in this league that has what I would consider an easy schedule.
I totally agree. And looking forward, so we talked about the schedule next year. They're not going to play Florida and Georgia till 2027, where they're going to host Florida in 2027 and visit Georgia that year. As someone who's been covering Tennessee since the 80s, I know those weren't rivalries when you first started at Tennessee, but they were rivalries for the bulk of your career covering Tennessee. Does it make you a little sad to see those go? And do you understand why they had, or do you understand that the SEC had to protect Vanderbilt and Kentucky as rivalries?
Yeah, I understand them protecting them. Would I prefer that Tennessee plays Georgia or Florida as opposed to Texas A&M? Absolutely. Yeah, I would rather see that. But I understand the way of the world. And I get the fact with the SEC that they want to try to play everybody home and away in a 4-year period, as opposed to how many trips has Tennessee made to College Station? 1?
Yeah.
Right?
1.
And A&M's been in the league since 2012. So they don't want that anymore. I remember sending a proposal that I had a few years ago to an assistant commissioner of the SEC. And I said, here's what I would do. And he looked at it and he said, are you going to go home and home with everybody in a 4-year period? I said, no, this schedule doesn't do it. He said, then scrap it. Because that's been the goal for years. It's been the goal to go home and home in a 4-year period with everybody in the league. And now they're going to accomplish that.
Yeah. And it's funny because I think, I don't know if you followed X yesterday and Vol X or Vol Twitter, whatever people call it nowadays. But the SEC world is very upset. They think Tennessee got a solid in 2 ways. One, Tennessee's home schedule next year. The bulk of their games are at home of the tough games because Alabama, Auburn, LSU, and Texas are all at home. And they drew Vanderbilt, Kentucky annually every year. Even though it makes sense historically, how unfair of an advantage is it for Tennessee to get to draw Vanderbilt, Kentucky every year now?
I do think if you want to pick the easiest pass of the permanent opponent is number 1 on that list. However, you can mitigate that by having them play a very difficult schedule among the other 6. And so when you throw Texas and LSU and Auburn in that equation, and you got to go to A&M, that makes your schedule hard. Even though you got a break with Vanderbilt and Kentucky, your schedule is extremely difficult anyway, just as everybody else in the league is. So if you're a team that felt like, man, we got 3 really difficult opponents, they can pad it a little bit by having you play some of the lesser other SEC teams, of which aren't very many right now. So you can kind of balance that. And the other part of that that's a little bit imbalanced, and I get it, and it's just part of the work. Look, I don't think the SEC schedules are totally equal now anyway. All right. I think some teams, obviously, like Florida, have tougher SEC schedules now than they did. You got 5 every year, 5 SEC home games, and then the next year have 4 SEC home games. So you say, well, that's an imbalance. Well, it's been imbalanced since they started the league because you cannot make every schedule equal. So you play the schedule you're given, the chips fall where they are. And again, I don't think anybody has an easy path to trying to get to Atlanta.
No, I agree. And I think my argument is if you study Tennessee football history a lot, I think for Tennessee football fans, a lot of this is it's about time, because I don't know if you know this stat, Jimmy, but we all know Tennessee was one of 2 schools that had to play Alabama and Georgia every year with Nick Saban and Kirby Smart in the SEC.
Yeah.
And if you go through history, take just off the top of your head, the 10 most legendary SEC coaches, pretty much every one of them, when they were in their prime at their school, their primary school, with the exception of Vince Dooley, Tennessee had to play that coach every year, pretty much. I mean, you talk Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer at Florida. You can talk Bobby Dodd at Georgia Tech when Georgia Tech was in the SEC. Johnny Vaught when he was at Ole Miss. All Pat Dye and Shug Jordan at Auburn. During those times, Tennessee was playing those teams every single year. It was just so. I think it might be about time Tennessee got a bit of a break with the schedule over their permanent opponents, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there have been a lot of great coaches in the league, and Tennessee faced most of them on a regular basis. And then, of course, you drew Alabama as one of your permanent opponents when you previously had this set up. So that wasn't any cupcake. Nick Saban had the best program in the nation for a good 12 to 14 years, right? And you didn't beat him until, I guess, since Heupel beat him in 2022, and Saban had won. Even Saban's first team, which was a mediocre 500 team, beat the stuffings out of Tennessee. So yeah, that's a good point. Tennessee having to go against all those great coaches for many years.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, before someone calls me out, I also forgot they had to go against Bear Bryant every year. So I guess I should throw that one in there too. Kind of a good coach. The Vol Report is brought to you by Vol Report is brought to you by Hometown Realty LLC. Go to RyanColeman.org. Knoxville's best from 2017 to 2022. Download the app, get instant updates, personalized searches, and more. That is RyanColeman.org, RyanColeman.org. It is now time for today's tough question, brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. And it's a question that Jamie kind of proposed to me on the phone yesterday, and I didn't even think about it too much until he said it, which was this. For those who don't know, Jeff Lebby was Josh Heupel's offensive coordinator in 2018 and 2019. Josh Heupel went undefeated with Lebby as his offensive coordinator at UCF in 2018. They're now going head-to-head with Lebby at Mississippi State. Who has the advantage, given the fact that they have connections? Who benefits more from their connections? Jeff Lebby or Josh Heupel? Jimmy, I'll give you the floor. Give me your thoughts.
I think that Jeff Lebby benefited from not just working with Josh Heupel, but he also worked with Lane Kiffin, and he also worked with Art Briles, who had it going at Baylor for many years. So Josh Heupel has had, I don't know that he's had a group quite as good as what Jeff Lebby has had. Now, having said that, and by the way, I think Alex Golesh was a very beneficent to Josh Heupel at Tennessee when he was here. So who's got the advantage on it? I'm going to lean a little bit toward Heupel. And the only reason I go a little bit advantage on that is he's more established at Tennessee, and he has got better talent than Mississippi State. As far as the scheming part of it, I really don't think Heupel has much of an advantage there. But if I got better players than you do, then if I run the same scheme, I should beat you. So I'm going to give a slight advantage to Heupel, mainly because I think he's got better players and he's more established at Tennessee than Jeff Lebby is at Mississippi State. But I cannot forget the fact that Mississippi State took on Arizona, which won their conference last year, which made the college football playoff, and which did they go to overtime with Texas in the playoff?
Yes, Arizona State. Yes, they did go to overtime with Texas, and not only did they go to overtime with Texas, but if not for a missed targeting call, Arizona State's winning that game.
Yeah, and I think Texas threw a touchdown pass to a tight end in overtime to win it. That's a really good team. They're still really good this year, and Mississippi State took them down. So this is a much improved Mississippi State team. They've got their quarterback back. Blake Shapen only played 4 games last year. He was productive in those games. He was productive when he was at Baylor. They've got a good receiving core. They're above average at running back, not great, but above average there. And so I don't think they have the talent that Tennessee has, but I do think they're going to throw some stuff at Tennessee that's going to catch Tennessee's defense by surprise.
In your experience, and we know the obvious one, though, Nick Saban. I mean, Nick Saban, what was he lost, 2 games ever to his assistants? That was Jimbo Fisher one time and Kirby Smart one time, but he was a master over his assistants. Mm-hmm. Is that typically the rule of head coaches or the exception? Does the head coach usually beat his former assistants?
Gosh, I don't know the answer to that. You gave one great example. I don't know. I would guess that, like with Urban Meyer, I don't know how many assistants he faced later as head coaches, but he had such a fantastic record. I would think he'd have the advantage over any of them, right?
Yeah.
So, boy, I can't think of hardly any assistants in football that came back and beat the head coach more often. So just off the top of my head, I'm going to say that advantage goes to the head coach over the assistant who became a head coach.
I would think so too. From Tennessee's perspective, and one of the closest I remember would be Philip Fulmer. When the only time I ever remember him going up against an assistant was when he went to Ole Miss in 2004 and faced David Cutcliffe. And if you remember, Jimmy, that was a bad Ole Miss team. It was the year after Eli Manning left, and David Cutcliffe, Fulmer had a much better team, and David Cutcliffe almost beat him that day in Oxford. It took a last-minute drive to win. And then a couple of quick interesting ones. When Bobby Dodd was at Georgia Tech, he won 2 of the first 3 games against General Neyland in 46, 47, and 48 when they went head-to-head. And I'm with you. I don't know too many other instances. I do know this. Bill Belichick in the NFL was the opposite of Nick Saban. Bill Belichick always lost to people that he had coached with on staff. So maybe there's not a hard rule, but that's an interesting point that Bill Belichick kept losing to his assistants.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think back to, like, John Majors had a whole lot of outstanding assistant coaches, and they later became head coaches. I just don't remember Majors facing many of those guys. So I tell you, I think the tree of assistants becoming head coaches is much more prevalent in college basketball than it is college football. Now, maybe that's because in college football, you have roughly 130 teams at your level. It may be 136 this year. College basketball, you got about 350, right?
Yep.
So there's a lot more opportunity for that assistant to become a head coach and then come back and face you. But in football, I just don't think is as prevalent as it is in college basketball.
No, that is true. A notable John Majors versus an assistant game, though, is the 85 Sugar Bowl when he went up against Jimmy Johnson and absolutely beat the brakes off Miami that year. One other interesting one, though, is I wonder
if Jimmy Johnson remembers that.
I'm sorry?
I wonder if Jimmy Johnson remembers that.
Did he coach for Johnny Majors?
No, he was so cocky going into that game. It wasn't whether they would beat Tennessee. It was by how much. And that Miami group, they were a cocky bunch of players. And they were basically when there was Penn State and Oklahoma that had played in the Orange Bowl, maybe. And the number 1 team lost. That opened the door for Miami to be the national champion if they beat Tennessee. And Tennessee, after falling behind 7-0, wiped the floor with Miami. So one of the great games Tennessee's ever played, one of the great schemes that Tennessee's defense has ever rolled out there. There were, I think, of Miami's 22 starters in that game, 21 of them played in the NFL. That's how talented that Miami team was.
Yeah, I've actually seen you can watch the old game. I wasn't alive when it happened, but I've looked at the old game in the past, and I watched it on YouTube. And you can see Jimmy Johnson beforehand already lobbying, saying we should be national champions because of what happened here and here and here. And it's like, well, don't you have to win your Sugar Bowl before you claim to be a national champion? And that was interesting. One other quick one is Johnny Majors did face Jackie Sherrill twice when Jackie Sherrill was at Pitt, and he lost to him both times, interestingly enough. I'm going to come back to this for a second, but first, today's tough question brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win, why settle? Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
So, Jimmy, you brought up a point about Jeff Lebby, that it wasn't just that he's worked with Josh Heupel, but that he's worked with Lane Kiffin and Art Briles as well. And we know that Josh Heupel, for the most part, his experience is almost exclusively, like, while he does employ the Briles principles in his system, really the only known offensive mind that he ever worked with was when he played under Mike Leach. So working under Art Briles and Lane Kiffin, beyond just the connections that Heupel and Lebby have, does that give Lebby an advantage that he maybe sees offenses from a little bit different perspective than even Heupel does, has a little more variety looking at them?
I think there's a strong case that could be made for that. He has seen, I'm a big believer that you can learn and peel things from other coaches that you like or that you think would fit into something that you want to do. And I think that Jeff Lebby has been able to do that for more resources than Josh Heupel. And having said that, I also think Heupel's extremely smart, and I think he's evolved as a coach. And I think that even though he might not have been with an Art Briles or a Lane Kiffin, I think he can look at what others are doing and try to incorporate that. I mean, for example, his offense this year is different from last year. They don't spread the field as much as they did previously. They brought the receivers in a little bit tighter. And so that's one thing he has changed. He's also, and I think, gone back to using more motion in his offense, where you didn't do it as much with Nico or probably Joe Milton. So, but I do think he's evolved, and I do think he's picked up things just by watching tape or film of others. But I do think there is an advantage to working with a lot of different, really bright offensive minds so that you can pick apart some of the things that they think or that they were incorporating, and you can utilize that for your own system.
Yeah, I agree. And what do you think of this analogy? And dare I bring it up? I'm sure you remember when, I mean, we've heard the comparisons of Josh Heupel to Steve Spurrier at Florida in the 90s because of their love for offense. Steve Spurrier didn't win a national championship until he got into he put Danny Wuerffel in shotgun. And for those who don't know the story, Steve Spurrier didn't like his quarterbacks playing in shotgun the first 4 or 5 years when he was at Florida. And then I think it was the Florida State game that they lost in the regular season where Danny Wuerffel just got clobbered. And then in the national title game, he put him in shotgun and they won 52-20.
Yes. And I remember when they got beat by Florida State. I remember a lot of complaining from Spurrier about Florida State hitting Wuerffel late. And there were some penalties against Florida State for roughing, but I think Spurrier thought there should have been about a dozen of them. And so he harped on that at that time before the Florida State game and the bowl game when he led to Florida winning the national championship, and handing that seed to the officials. Don't you dare Florida State back late or through the echo of the whistle. How much that impacted the game, I don't know. I know that Spurrier was really long in talking about it. And I wonder if from Florida State's perspective, they heard all that stuff and I don't know, maybe weren't quite as aggressive. I'm not sure about that. But to your point, to come back after you got drilled by Florida State and to score 50 against that defense, that was pretty impressive.
I agree. And You're right. I mean, the mark of a best offensive mind, I would guess, is if they can adjust with the times. And, you know, we bring up Spurrier going to shotgun, and then Spurrier becoming a run-oriented coach when he was at South Carolina. And Another one is Tom Osborne. Tom Osborne in the 90s really put more speed behind his triple option attack, which hadn't been done at Nebraska before. So can we say that Josh Heupel, the adjustments he's made, he's entering that pantheon of offensive minds, of great offensive minds?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I really do. And I'll say this too, and there's a lot more games to be played. There is no way, Caleb, that I thought that Joey Aguilar would be this good. I talked to Heupel during the offseason. I heard him at press conferences, and he said it after the spring game, after Nico Iamaleava left. He said, we will have a quarterback ready to play. And I thought, okay, how well? Pretty darn ready. Because I didn't see Aguilar being able to do all this. And I've got to I give Aguilar credit, right? You got to. But I give Heupel and Joey Halsley and that staff a lot of credit for getting this kind of production out of Aguilar. I don't know this 100%, but I've got a feeling they're like, okay, Joey can throw this pass, but he's not so good at throwing this. He likes this play. He doesn't like that one. So they eradicated the things, the old saying, play to your strengths and against your weaknesses. I think that's what they're doing with Joey, and he's responded. Look, nobody in the country thought Aguilar would be doing what he's doing now. Nobody in the country thought that after the third week, people would say, he's a Heisman Trophy candidate. I sure didn't. So I give them a lot of credit for what they've done with Aguilar and how they have adjusted the offense to suit Aguilar's skill set and how Aguilar has responded to that.
Totally agree. He is Jimmy Hyams. Jimmy Hyams, where can we find your work?
Right here, Off the Hook Sports. And with collaboration with you, I've been writing a lot more columns. And so you can get on offthehooksports.com. We do a Friday podcast with Heath Schuler, Inside the Huddle with Heath and Hyams. And that goes live at 2:00. You can find that account. You can also find it on Off the Hook Sports. We're doing that, and we've got going on. I also do a Sunday TV show with John Pennington on WATE that runs 11 a.m. to 12:30. So I am retired, sort of. I work about 10 or 12, maybe 15 hours a week. I've tried to cut that down a lot, but and this is true. I've heard people say, you can't let it go. I cannot go cold turkey. So I'm just doing the things that I enjoy doing with you and Dave.
All right. Well, he will have the next podcast with Heath Schuler on Friday. Thanks a lot, Jimmy. You have a great rest of your day. Have a good one.
Thanks, Caleb. You too. Take care.
You too. That was Jimmy Hyams. Today's tough question was brought to you by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorneys. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones by T. Scott Jones, banksandjones.com. Portions of the program are brought to you by Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations. Your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com. Chat with 2tsmortgage.com. When we come back, the 5 key Vols to watch for against Mississippi State. That's going to be 4 downs. Stick with us. 2 minutes off the hook. Sports.
Why Banks & Jones? Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks & Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks & Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks & Jones. T. Scott Jones. banksandjones.com.
Hello, ma'am. I'm here to look at that plumbing problem.
Oh boy. Yep. You're gonna need a whole new sink.
If this toilet is no good, you're gonna need a new one ASAP. You are not gonna believe this. You're all out of milk. Have you heard about our service plan?
I need to call Scott's.
Scott's Plumbing, your trusted neighborhood plumber since 1977.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Welcome back to Off the Hook Sports. Portions of the program are brought to you by Hemp House, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Hemp House Chat with 2Ts.com. Use the promo code HOOKED for 10% off. It is time for this day in Tennessee football history, and it's a good one. It's another game to remember. On this day in 2016, 9 years ago, Tennessee finally erased an 11-game losing streak to the Florida Gators by beating them 38-28. The Vols had seemed snake-bitten with Florida to that point. Now, the losing streak to Florida from 2005 to 2010, nobody minded. Tennessee had fallen off. Urban Meyer was rolling with a mini dynasty, 2 national titles in 3 years. However, the next part of that losing streak from 2011 to 2015 graded everybody beat in Knoxville because it was Will Muschamp and Jim McElwain. Will Muschamp beats Tennessee in 2011 and in 2012 when Tennessee could have been good enough to beat Florida both years, particularly 2011. 2013, Tennessee had the better team than Florida, but Butch Jones made the inexplicable decision to start Nathan Peterman in the first half, and his horrible play is why Tennessee lost that year. 2014 and 2015, Tennessee had 2-score leads in the fourth quarter and blew them both, losing by 1. And at that point, you felt they were snake-bitten with Florida. And then in 2016, hosting Florida, they fall behind 21-0 because of a series of mistakes. And then they cut it to 21-3 going into halftime. And you think they're just going to blow it again. And they completely rebound in the second half. And they score 35 unanswered in the second half, go on a tear and unleash 11 years of frustration to beat Florida 38-28 and finally erase that losing streak that had plagued them for so long. That had been their first win at Florida since 2004 when James Will Hoyt nailed the 50-yard field goal. Now, of course, the curse returned the very next year as Florida beat Tennessee off a Hail Mary, and then Dan Mullen came and Jeremy Pruitt was at Tennessee, and things were going to get bad again, and Tennessee wasn't able to erase it again until 2022 when they beat Florida 38-33, also on September the 24th, interestingly enough. And then the next time they beat Florida was last year, which was in 2024. So 24 seems like if there's a 2 and a 4 in the number, that seems like the magic year for Tennessee to beat Florida. It's got to be 2 and a 4 in the number. Unfortunately for Tennessee, there's not a 2 and a 4 in the number this year, to my knowledge. So they might just have to beat Florida the old-fashioned way without any juju. So we'll see what happens this day in Tennessee sports history. Brought to you by Sports Treasures. That's right, Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia daily updates, facebook.com/sports treasures TN, facebook.com/sports treasures TN.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
It is time for 4 Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. 4 Downs, the 5 key Vols to watch for against the Mississippi State Bulldogs on Saturday. This is an interesting matchup game as Mississippi State runs a similar offense with Jeff Lebby that Tennessee runs with Josh Heupel. Jeff Lebby was Josh Heupel's offensive coordinator. So a lot to talk about with Mississippi State and Tennessee, as there are a lot of connections between the two. And because of that, this is going to be a very intriguing game overall. So who are the 5 key Vols to watch for against Mississippi State? This is 4 Downs, brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used, Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. We'll do 5 players for 4 Downs because the last 2 players are part of one specific part of why Tennessee needs to beat Mississippi State. So we are going to do the soundboard again with Cooper Mays. For those who don't know, and I'm sure everybody knows now, the soundboard for Cooper Mays is I imitate Cooper Mays' voice because when Dave Hooker is here, he tees off Cooper Mays for 4 Downs with his voice, with his soundboard that he has that I don't. So Cooper Mays here, hit like and subscribe. Thank you, Coop. All right. Who are the 5 key Vols to watch for against Mississippi State? And Coop here, first down. Coop, from first down, the 5 key Vols, one of the underrated ones, Andre Turrentine. Now, I've been very critical of Andre Turrentine this year. I think he's not cut out to play SEC ball at safety. But he is starting for Tennessee because of his veteran presence. And he did have an interception last week against UAB. Mississippi State, very similar to Josh Heupel, likes to take the deep shot. They try to lull you to sleep, and then punch you way deep over the middle. They got Arizona State on a deep ball late to win 24-20. That's what they do. Andre Turrentine is going to be the safety that has to be ready over the top. Andre Turrentine cannot get beat over the top, and it's going to be key all game for him to do that. And remember this, guys, part of the Lebby Heupel offense is to read the safety. It's harder to disguise coverages given the wide splits and things, but those aren't being run as much this year. Andre Turrentine is a smart player. He's got to be able to disguise his coverages when he's going up against Mississippi State, because if not, he will get torched. Now, he's not going to be the most athletic player. A lot of times he can't recover as well as others. So he's got to know what Mississippi State's doing. He can't get beat deep, but he's also got to be able to disguise his coverages. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a big test for him, because if he doesn't disguise his coverage as well, Blake Shapen will torch him. It will be bad. So Andre Turrentine has got to step up. Mississippi State has 2 elite receivers on this roster, okay? And we're going to talk about the Mississippi State players who will be key tomorrow. But Mississippi State has 2 elite receivers on this roster who can torch you deep. The cornerbacks, Colton Hood, and then Colton Hood, and on the other side, Jalen McMurray, and Ty Redmond with Boo Carter at nickel. They'll all be responsible too. But the big thing is to not get torched over the top, and that is where Andre Turrentine is going to come in. He's the most important player in that secondary, and particularly when none of these are lockdown corners. None of these guys are Jamal McCoy. Tennessee's not missing Ricky Gibson III with these guys, but they are missing Jamal McCoy. So there's going to be some times they get beat over the top. Andre Turrentine has to be ready. He's going to have a lot all on him. Idris Farouk will too, but Andre Turrentine is the veteran presence. It's on him. Cooper Mays here. Second down. All right. Thank you, Coop. Second down, Star Thomas. Star Thomas is going to have to torch the Bulldogs on the ground. Now, Mississippi State's stats are very, very skewed. What do I mean by that? Mississippi State, right now, their rush defense appears to not be too bad. It's number 68 in the nation, which is not good, but not bad in terms of yards per attempt. They give up 3.9 yards per attempt. That's right in the middle, mediocre. There are 136 teams. Mississippi State's rush defense is right in the middle. However, Mississippi State has played Southern Miss, Alcorn State, and Northern Illinois. That's right. Let me say that again. Southern Miss, Alcorn State, and Northern Illinois. What did they do against the one good team they faced, the one Power 5 team they have faced this year when they faced Arizona State? Yes, they won, and they get a lot of credit for winning that game, and I picked them to win that game in an upset. in a big one. However, in that game, they also gave up 2 100-yard rushers. That's right. They allowed 2 100-yard rushers. Their defense was superb guarding Sam Levitt through the air. He only had 82 yards passing with 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, was 10 of 22. Mississippi State's pass defense is a proven commodity. It is elite. That will, as good as Joey Aguilar is, he's probably not going to be able to torch them for a lot of yards. The way you beat this Mississippi State team is the way Tennessee was winning games last year, on the ground. Torch them on the ground. Raleek Brown for Arizona State had 18 carries for 110 yards, averaging over 6 yards an attempt. And Kanye Udo had 23 carries for 105 yards, averaging 4.5 yards an attempt and a touchdown. Arizona State ran for 251 yards on Mississippi State. Again, this is how you beat them. This is how you beat them. You stick to the ground game. And Tennessee's got a great running back, a smart runner, and Star Thomas. Honorable mentions on this, you could say Deshaun Bishop. And then Peyton Lewis is third. Peyton Lewis still makes some mistakes in the running game, but they're going to have to step up too. The whole running backs as a conglomerate are going to have to step up, but I think Star Thomas is the best. And Tennessee needs to get him the ball a lot. Star Thomas is going to be key. Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down. All right, third down. Sticking with the run game. Wendell Moe Jr. Lance Hurd and Jesse Perry have been superb at tackle for Tennessee. They have done an amazing job. They deserve a lot of respect, and they will protect Joey Aguilar. But for this running game to work, it's the interior offensive line that needs to step up. And Wendell Moe Jr. has been the highest graded PFF interior offensive lineman for Tennessee on a consistent basis. Sam Pendleton and Shamrod Umarov are both very good too. But honestly, Moe has been the best of the 3 interior offensive linemen. And he's at left guard, and Tennessee's been running to the left a good bit sometimes. Well, yeah, excuse me. No, he's but yeah, so Wendell Moe has been in 3 of the 4 games the highest graded non-tackle offensive lineman for Tennessee. They're going to run behind him if they're going to make any impact. And they need him to continue to do what he's doing. Wendell Moe played extremely well against Georgia, by the way. So he's proven he can do it at this level. And they need him to continue doing that, because Wendell Moe is going to be crucial for Tennessee to be able to run the ball, which they have to be able to run the ball. 4 Downs brought to you by Ted Russell Ford Lincoln, your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville. New and used, East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer.
Right now, get 0% APR, 0 down, and 0 payments for 90 days on select models, plus 2 years complimentary maintenance.
Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down. 4th down, and it's about the defensive line. Bryson Eason is key in the middle. Mississippi State has a top 25 ranked rush offense. They average, to be fair, I believe 5.29, not 9.29, that'd be insane, but they average 5.29 yards per attempt. So number 31. But they are number 23 in total yards on the year at 826. And in yards per a game, they are number 31 still at 206.5. But they average over 200 rushing yards a game. That's just Tennessee, by the way. Tennessee has a better rushing offense in terms of total yards than Mississippi State, but they average fewer yards per carry at 5.24. But they have a very good rushing offense. And again, Tennessee fans know the Heupel offense all too well, and Jeff Lebby runs it. What's key with the rushing offense in Mississippi State? A vertical attack. They hit you over the middle. They smash you over the middle, and Tennessee does the same thing. And when they do that, that makes it crucial that you sit there and clog the middle, meaning Bryson Eason will be key. Without Jackson Moore and David Hobbs, he's got to get the push in the middle to make sure that Mississippi State's unable to run the ball right up the gut. It's a vertical rushing attack, and if Tennessee can't control it on the interior, Mississippi State could give them problems. The Vols have to employ a vertical rushing attack in this game if they are going to win. If they're going to win. The vertical rushing attack is absolutely crucial. And sticking with the defensive line, though, not only do they have to contain the vertical rushing attack, they have to get pressure on the quarterback. That's right. They have to get pressure on the quarterback, and that makes the most important player in this game to be Joshua Josephs. When Mississippi State played Arizona State, they gave up 3 sacks in the game. 2 of them they gave up to Clayton Smith, an edge rusher. Joshua Josephs is similar to Clayton Smith. Okay. Tennessee, I'm eating some crow. I thought Jordan Ross was going to take the I thought he was going to straight up take the edge rusher spot for himself this year, given his raw talent. And I thought Joshua Josephs was just a complimentary piece who benefited from James Pierce last year. I was wrong. Joshua Josephs already has 3 sacks on the year, 2 forced fumbles, 2 pass deflections, 13 overall tackles, 9 of which were solo. Joshua Josephs is an elite edge rusher, and Tennessee needs him to get all the pressure in the world on Blake Shapen. Even it's funny because the Jeff Lebby offense is like Josh Heupel's. It requires you to get rid of the ball quickly. But given Arizona State, Tennessee can get pressure, and Mississippi State's going to give up sacks. By the way, they've given up 6 on the year. So it's not just Arizona State. They've given up 3 other sacks against way lower level competition. So taking that into account, yeah, Joshua Josephs is going to be key in this game. And I think Joshua Josephs getting pressure could keep Mississippi State from even making this a game. He will be crucial in this. So that's the big story for Tennessee, is that Joshua Josephs absolutely has to step up going forward. And we're going to see how things are going from that. So Joshua Josephs is crucial, the most important player for Tennessee. I see some signs that like Jackson Moy is expected back this week. I know that was reported somewhat last night, but it's not 100% confirmed. Jackson Moy posted a video, an Instagram story yesterday, said, "God, thank you is truly all I can say. Let's ride." That was implying he was cleared to play. It was then taken down. We'll get more on that this week, but I will give my thoughts on that and where Jackson Moy truly is when the injury report comes out, which will be later today. I'll talk about that tomorrow. So right now, Bryson Eason is the key one for Tennessee. In the middle, and he'll be key too, because that'll help Joshua Josephs get the sacks we're talking about. Portions of the program are brought to you by HoundDogs of Knoxville, champions look good in orange. hdknoxville.com, hdknoxville.com. When we come back, Tennessee, we are going to talk about something Danny White said with regards to home and homes and what it means in the future. Stick with us. 2 minutes off the hook. Sports.
It's a new year, a new day, and Ted Russell Lincoln has an exciting new offer to share. Right now, get a 2024 Lincoln Navigator with 0% APR for 72 months and up to $4,000 in bonus cash. Or drive away in a new 2024 Lincoln Corsair Grand Touring with 0% APR for 60 months and up to $4,500 in bonus cash. It's time to get excited about the ride. Come and see what a luxury car experience truly is at Ted Russell Lincoln Knoxville.
Hello, ma'am. Here to look at that plumbing problem?
Oh boy. Yep. You're gonna need a whole new sink.
If this toilet is no good, you're gonna need a new one ASAP. You are not gonna believe this. You're all out of milk. Have you heard about our service plan?
I need to call Scott's.
Scott's Plumbing, your trusted neighborhood plumber since 1977.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Welcome back to All Things Sports. Portions of the program are brought to you by Peak IV Hydration in South Knoxville and Sevierville. Live your life to the fullest. Hydrate, rejuvenate, and elevate your health with Peak IV Hydration. PeakIVHydration.com. Link is in the chat. Let's get rolling again with some comments by Danny White. And it's What the H? Brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs, looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. They want to be your jeweler. RickTerryJewelry.com. Danny White does not want neutral site games in the future. He wants more home and home games as Tennessee has moved, as the SEC schedule has now evolved. During the Big Orange Countdown before Tennessee's win over UAB 56-24, Danny White said, quote, "For us, I want to maximize games in Neyland Stadium. We have a sold-out stadium. We have the best fan base in all of sports. As we look into the future in non-conference scheduling, it'll be home and home against that Power 4 series and make sure we have one here every other year." What Danny White is talking about is this, and this is how Tennessee's schedule is going to work going forward, and we see it now. Tennessee has 5 home games next year in the SEC, 4 road games, hence the reason they visit Georgia Tech next year. Danny White wants to make sure Tennessee has 7 home games every year. And to do that, you will either get 5 home SEC games or 4 home SEC games and a Power 5 team at home. One of the reasons this is a big deal is because the neutral site games for a long time seemed exciting, but let me tell you how neutral site games work, okay? When you play a neutral site game, you split the revenue between your team, the other team, and the promoter. And the promoter's whoever the game is. Now, with the Chick-fil-A kickoff in Atlanta, something like that, such a big game in that moment that the promoter is able to pay. Well, you split the revenue from the attendance with your team, the other team, and the promoter. And then also you get a cut of the TV deal from the promotion of the game. The combination of the two will sometimes outweigh doing a home and home. However, now with an extra home game in the conference and sometimes an extra road game, though, you now have more leverage to mathematically. It makes more sense to play home and homes consistently, because what you don't want is a situation where you're playing 7 home games one year and 6 another, because you're just playing your 4 home conference games and your 2 non-conference games and then 1 on a neutral site. You don't want that. So I think Danny White's goal now is to make sure there's always 7 home games. 8 home games or 7 plus a game with a promoter is not as important anymore, because the games are so much more marquee that the attendance and the tickets they can charge are going to be worth so much more money to have them in a home and home. And so White wants Tennessee to end neutral site games. Neutral site games for Tennessee football are, believe it or not, relatively new. They haven't been all that common. Now, Johnny Majors did do them a good bit in the 1980s, and that actually helped bring Tennessee to a national presence. They played Iowa in 1987 at Giant Stadium, and then in 1990 they played Colorado in the Pigskin Classic. That was kind of a common thing Tennessee would do. But as the 90s kicked in, what Tennessee did more was primarily home and homes with elite programs. I think 91, 92, 93, 94, 95. I don't think they did any game that was a neutral site game that was a home or a road game. Now, sometimes they would play road games at kind of neutral site, like how their road games against Ole Miss would always be in Memphis, but Ole Miss always preferred that during that time. And that was a consistent theme for the Vols all the way until 2012, where in 2012, Tennessee played NC State in the Georgia Dome on a Friday night won 35-21. That began a trend of them playing quote unquote neutral site games. So they played NC State that year. Then they played Bowling Green in Nashville in 2016. Then you had the battle at Bristol in 2015, excuse me. Then you had the battle at Bristol in 2016, where they played Virginia Tech and Bristol. Then you had Georgia Tech in Atlanta, which was technically a neutral site game, oddly, in 2017. You had West Virginia in Charlotte in 2018. You had, it was just 4 home games in 2019. And a very easy schedule, and Tennessee still managed to lose to Georgia State, BYU, different story. But you had 4 home games in 2019. 2020, you had COVID, so it was a bit of a drawback. You had a home-and-home with Pittsburgh in 2021 and 2022. Then you got Virginia and Nashville, technically neutral site in 2023. NC State and Charlotte, technically a neutral site game in 2024. And obviously this past year, Syracuse and Atlanta. So since 2012, since that started, 2012, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018. That's 5. And then 2023 and 2024. So 7 of the last 13 years, Tennessee's had a quote unquote neutral site regular season game. It's really not worth it. And I think Danny White is going in favor of more home and homes because of the non-conference games. What are y'all's thoughts? What the H brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Designs. They want to be your jeweler looking for affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. RickTerryJewelry.com.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want. Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.
So the poll question is up. You guys vote on it. Which do you prefer for Tennessee when it comes to marquee non-conference games, neutral sites or home and homes? As we know, college basketball does a lot of neutral sites. I'm going to give you guys my take. And it may be controversial, but here it goes. I think they should ditch the conference title games, expand the regular season 2 more weeks to the first and second week of December. Every team plays 14 games, 9 conference games. Then you get 5 non-conference games. I think college football, when it opens Labor Day weekend, should have marquee neutral site games across the board. And I want them in the NFL stadiums in Atlanta, in Dallas, in LA, you name it. I want those neutral site games. You know, like how you have the preseason NIT in college basketball? Have it like preseason bowl games for college football, the Chick-fil-A one in Atlanta. I mean, whatever, you name it. And do like an SEC Big Ten challenge if you want. Everybody should do it. Then you should get another marquee non-conference game in late December, something like that, that really raises the stakes with the playoff on the line. The conference championship games don't make any sense anymore. You should just totally ditch them. And I think on a 1 through, and then you have a weeks 1 through week 14 where, or yeah, 15 weeks, maybe 16 in a season like this year where there could be 2 byes if that happens. But I think at that point you get a neutral site game and then just give every team an extra home game. And then that way you still get 2 marquee non-conference games. Here's my ideal scenario. And I love this for non-conference. I still miss the 8 home games, by the way, or the 8 conference games, because I loved the way the non-conference was set up, where you played 1 marquee game, 2 lower level FBS games, and then a Division II school that you get to beat up on that pays them the money to keep their program afloat. I have no problem with that. I've never had any issue with that whatsoever. And if I had my perfect world, all conferences would be 9 teams. You do a round robin with every team in the conference. Actually, no, I take that back. I could do it this way. All conferences would be 10 teams. You do a round robin with the other 9 teams of the conference. You have a marquee non-conference game, and then you have a Division II team that you play, and then you have a group of 5 team that you play. That's how I would do it personally. I know a lot of people would disagree, but I'm fine with 9 conference games, and you have 8 conference games, 9 teams in a conference, 8 conference games, round robin, 4 non-conference games, and then I would be fine with the conference title game. But the way the playoff is set up, with no more, with the playoff being expanded now, I'm sorry, I would straight up ditch the conference title games and I'd expand the regular season to 14 games. I think that would be more fun, honestly, for everybody involved. And so because I do like, and Vols win is right, I'm okay with opening weekend in a domed NFL stadium only. I agree. I think college football, I do like here's why I'm okay with opening weekend on Labor Day in NFL stadiums. The NFL's not playing that weekend. They get to own the weekend. The NFL's giving them Labor Day weekend from the TV perspective. They should take advantage. Put them in the big cities where people are going to show up. I've always said, have a big NASCAR event. Like, have the marquee game every year. I forget what the main race is over Labor Day weekend, but have it in Georgia, which is a hub for NASCAR, just like it is a hub for college football in the Atlanta area, and have the big race on Sunday at a speedway. Have the marquee college football game that Saturday night in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and make a whole weekend out of it. That's what I would do. Honestly, and I would have it be like a rematch of the previous year's national championship game. But I do think with the setup now, home and homes are going to be more important from a business perspective. And so 92% of you agree with me. 92% say they prefer home and homes. 8% say neutral sites. Neutral sites are a thing of the past, I'm pretty sure. It is time for the stat of the day. And the stat of the day is brought to you by Joe Neubert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Neubert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNeubertCollision.com, JoeNeubertCollision.com. The stat of the day is this. 2026, as we already knew because of the division split, ends a 34-year streak of Tennessee not playing Florida and not playing Georgia. Tennessee has played both Florida and Georgia for 34 straight years, dating back to 1992 when the division split. But it goes beyond that. It ends a 38-year streak. A 38-year streak of Tennessee not playing Tennessee playing at least Florida or Georgia during the regular season. 2026 will be the first time since 1987 that Tennessee hasn't played Florida or Georgia in a season. Because they played Georgia in 88 and 89, and they played Florida in 90 and 91, and then the division split in 92. So 2026 will be the first time since 1987 Tennessee hasn't played Florida or Georgia in a season. Again, stat of the day brought to you by Joe Neubert Collision Center. For nearly 50 years, Neubert Collision Center has been East Tennessee's best choice for quality repair work and fantastic customer service. JoeNeubertCollision.com. JoeNeubertCollision.com. When we come back, John Mateer is injured and Mike Gundy is fired. We're going to play a little hot or cold and bank on it. Stick with us. 2 minutes off the hook. Sports.
A beacon of hope in a world of high prices. Look to the skies, Knoxville. Super Savings is here. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 Volume 4 dealer.
Right now, get 0% APR, 0 down, and 0 payments for 90 days on select models, plus 2 years complimentary maintenance.
Come see the super dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location, Parkside Drive, or Kingston Pike.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Community banking is about location and much more. It's about family. We reside in your community. We are a part of your community. At Commercial Bank, our commitment extends beyond the walls of our branches. It's displayed each day in the opportunities we provide, the money we give back, and the time we commit, all to help improve the lives of the people, families, and businesses that make our communities great. Commercial Bank, life made better.
Now in its 45th year, the second and third generations continue Joe Neubert's commitment.
His vision of what this business needed to be, we still try to live up to that.
Joe Neubert Collision Center.
Are you ready to get strong? At NFC, we offer top-notch weight training and functional fitness, so you can build strength and improve your performance. Join today at nfc1.com or stop by any one of our 7 East Tennessee locations.
Welcome back to the program. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. Portion of the show is brought to you by Quality Tire Pro, serving Chattanooga community since 1957. All major brands of tires, full service automotive brake alignments, oil changes, and more. QualityTirePros.com. Walk in and say, hey, Mo, Off Book Sports sent you. QualityTirePros.com. I want to address a question on the message boards, which is how would you have every Power 5 game team play? How can you have every Power 4 school play in neutral site games on the same weekend? Are there enough stadiums? Well, no. There are 68 Power 4 teams. There are 67 in conferences plus Notre Dame. However, and there's only 30 NFL stadiums. Even though there's 32 teams, we know that the New York and LA teams play in the same stadium. However, that doesn't mean there aren't other venues. One, I'm not sure you'd have every Power 4 school play each other. I think you only have to do like the 10 biggest ones. But let's bring it to every Power 4 school, because I love this fun experiment. Have them all at those stadiums like we're talking about. And then have a game at the Cotton Bowl, the old Cotton Bowl Stadium. That would be interesting. Have the old Cotton Bowl Stadium host a game, because I think that would be very intriguing. And then you could find other ways to make a stadium that is take stadiums still in existence that maybe aren't in use as much. How about this? How about another battle at Bristol? Or take historic baseball stadiums, Yankee Stadium, Fenway Park, Wrigley Field. Play games there. Wouldn't that be epic? I know it's the heart of baseball season. It's the end of August. Make sure the Cubs, Yankees, and Red Sox are always on the road during that weekend at the end of August, and play a football game there. Play a football game. It wouldn't take too long. It'd take a day to get the stadium set up, and then a day to remove it and get the baseball field back ready to roll. Play a football game there for a weekend. That would be epic. Have the old school where you had the little diamond. Remember who remembers the old Raider Stadium where the diamond was still showing when you were running across the field? Then do something like that. That'd be fun. Actually, another one. Here's one. Play a game in Hawaii. Play a game in Hawaii. You don't have to play at just the NFL stadiums. As we know, Tennessee or in college basketball, you play these like invitationals every year in preseason. Sometimes you're at Madison Square Garden or NBA stadiums. Other times they're randomly in Alaska. Do like the Alaska Shootout or do Hawaii. Yeah. So play a football stadium at the spot in Hawaii in Honolulu. Do one there. So I would say, yeah, a couple other ones that could be neutral site games. I mean, the Liberty Bowl in Memphis, they got upgraded, but they are upgrading it, but it's a historic stadium. Play one there. So I think that it would be, there's a lot of different places where you could play a neutral site game. Washington Commanders are moving back into RFK Stadium in the fall or in a couple of years. Once they do that, keep the one at Landover Stadium in PG County and have a game out there. I'm just saying there's a lot of ways you could go, a lot of ways you could play a neutral site game that's not just at NFL games. So let's get rolling with some unfortunate news. And if you're a Vol fan, you're probably thinking, well, this does help Tennessee, but you don't like it because nobody likes how this works out. I hate this. I hate this for college football. I hate this for the sport because of the storyline that had been happening. But Oklahoma quarterback John Mateer is going to miss about a month after suffering a broken bone in his right hand in Saturday's win over Auburn, according to ESPN Pete Thamel. The Sooners announced Mateer will undergo surgery, but did not disclose the details of the timeline of the injury or a timeline for his return. This is as Oklahoma moves to 4-0, is right now looking like a potential top 10 program. I had them number 1 in my rankings. They're number 7 in the AP poll, number 10 in the coaches poll. I had them number 1 because of their resume to this point with wins over Michigan and Auburn. And truth be told, this is sickening because this is such a story. A guy who transferred to Oklahoma, revitalized the Sooners with the air raid under new offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle. Mateer and Arbuckle played together at Washington State. They're now bringing their system to Oklahoma, and they were rolling at 4-0. These are the type of stories you love in college football. And Mateer gets hurt I can't stress how much I hate this. Now, here is the good news for Oklahoma. Look, here's the bad news, good news. Bad news, good news. Bad news, he's not playing against Texas. That's what I hate the most. I love the Oklahoma-Texas rivalry on October the 7th, and John Mateer is not going to be there when they play Texas. Good news, and this is good news, by the way. If there was ever a time for John Mateer to get hurt in the season and have to miss a month, he picked the right time. Oklahoma has a bye this week. They play Kent State the next week. So they're going to win the next 2 games. Then they get Texas, which they're probably going to lose. Okay, that's fine. You know, you hate that they're probably going to lose it, but they do get Texas. That's 3 weeks gone right there. Now, they have to visit South Carolina on October the 18th. They have to visit South Carolina on October the 18th. That is going to be a tough game. That's their toughest game. However, it comes down to this. Can Oklahoma win one SEC game without John Mateer against either South Carolina or Ole Miss? If they can, they might be able to still have a path to the playoff. Now, let's say they beat South Carolina without Mateer, which could happen because, by the way, guys, as we're talking about this, while Mateer is hurt, Lenora Sellers is playing hurt, and he might not be ready to go for South Carolina. So if they can beat South Carolina without Mateer, and then Ole Miss comes to town, they could hopefully have Mateer ready to go for Ole Miss, and then they host Ole Miss, visit Tennessee, visit Alabama. Alabama's after a bye. We don't know how long they will be ready to go, how long they will be though. But I'm going to say this: Oklahoma visits Tennessee on November the 1st. Bank on it. This is brought to you by Commercial Bank, member FDIC, Life Made Better. John Mateer, regardless of whether or not he plays, is not going to be 100% when Oklahoma plays Tennessee. And because of that, and this is bank on it, Oklahoma is no longer a threat to Tennessee this year, the way we thought they were before yesterday.
Commercial Bank is your neighborhood bank. What makes us different from other banks? We understand that every customer has unique opportunities, challenges, and financial concerns. We don't expect you to fit into the same box as the next person or business. Whether it's purchasing a home, saving for your child's future, or planning for your next vacation, we're with you every step of the way to navigate life's big decisions. Commercial Bank. Life made better.
Oklahoma at the start of the year, I already had that as a circled win for Tennessee. I just never saw them going into Knoxville and beating Josh Heupel in Tennessee, particularly with the way this offense is now. However, Oklahoma was looking like they had revitalized their offense and saved Brent Venables' job with John Mateer and Ben Arbuckle with the way they were running things. John Mateer not fully healthy changes this completely. And Oklahoma already had, I still didn't consider them a big threat in Knoxville because, again, Josh Heupel at home against pretty good teams. Unless you're playing Georgia, he's flawless at home, as we're seeing. Oklahoma now they have no shot at beating Tennessee. And I'm going to make that the poll question, by the way, with John Mateer hurt. With John Mateer hurt, does OU now have any shot at Tennessee, even if he plays on November 1st? Okay, that's how we're going to phrase it. Yes and no. You guys let me know. Yes and no. With John Mateer hurt, does OU have any shot now at Tennessee, even if he plays on November the 1st? I don't think they do. I think that is a lock win for Tennessee. Now, I'm saying this before September is over. There is no chance that Oklahoma is going to beat Tennessee in November with John Mateer hurt. And again, if he's expected back in 4 weeks, Tennessee game is about 6 weeks away. And we're talking 4 weeks from the surgery. So 4 weeks from the surgery, by the way, because right now it is, let's look at the actual date. 4 weeks from the surgery, we're talking is today's September the 24th, so October the 1st, October the 18th, October the 25th. Okay, it's October the 1st, October the 8th, October the 15th, October the 22nd. October the 22nd would be 4 weeks from today. And during that time, Oklahoma's going to play Kent State, Texas, and South Carolina. 5 weeks from today, 4 weeks is optimistic. 5 weeks from today, they will be gearing up to visit Tennessee because they play Ole Miss after the 4th week. They will be gearing up to visit Tennessee after 5 weeks from today. And John Mateer is expected to potentially optimistically be back in 4 weeks. That does not mean 100%. And if being back in 4 weeks is your best case scenario, being 100% in 5 weeks is borderline impossible. So I thought Oklahoma already had an uphill battle to face Tennessee, and it's now really an uphill battle. My guess is Michael Hawkins will be the starter for Oklahoma now going forward. Michael Hawkins, to his credit, he's only completed 1 of 3 passes for 33.3% of his for 5 yards. So it hasn't done much. But last year, he actually did see a lot of action, and he's a dual threat quarterback. Ran for 204 yards for Oklahoma and completed 63% of his passes for 783 yards, averaging 6.5 yards an attempt. He was better than Jackson Arnold. Michael Hawkins, as a recruit, to be fair, it's not like this kid doesn't have talent. He was a 4-star recruit, and Ben Arbuckle was a great offensive mind. So I think he could still be good. I think he could still be a very good quarterback in Oklahoma. Could still be very good. But the fit for John Mateer's offense specifically was always going to be for Ben Arbuckle's offense, was always going to be John Mateer. And not having John Mateer is it's a problem. It's a problem. So I don't think OU has a chance in hell of beating Tennessee in Knoxville on November the 1st. I didn't think their chance was that good anyway. And now I'm certain that their chance is that they have no chance in hell of beating Tennessee. So it's very, very, very unfortunate. I don't like seeing these things happen. Now, when you talk about DJ Lagway being hurt and in a walking boot, and Tennessee might face Harrison Bailey in Florida at the end of the year, that's a different story. DJ Lagway hasn't played well. They're not good. And Florida's not good. But Oklahoma was competing for a college football playoff spot. And this is just the type of stuff you hate to see. It's like, it's like the NBA Finals this past year when in Game 7, the Pacer star Tyrese Halliburton suffered a severe right Achilles tendon tear in the first quarter, and then now he's going to miss all of this season. It's like there feels like such a damper when stuff like that happens. No one ever likes winning that way, and it looks like that's how Tennessee is going to beat Oklahoma, because John Mateer is not going to be fully healthy, and Michael Hawkins is not going to be good enough in this offense, particularly to beat Tennessee. That's kind of the issue. So, again, sad story, but Michael Hawkins is out for a month due to injury, and that eliminates a potential threat to Tennessee portions of the program. Brought to you by the UPS Store, Hardin Valley, helping individuals and small businesses, wide range of products and services, locally owned and operated. 10629 Hardin Valley Road, 10629 Hardin Valley Road. More news surrounding Tennessee football. Let's play a little hot or cold. What do you say, huh? Let's have a little fun. Maybe not fun. I never like to celebrate somebody losing their job, but some of the stuff, some of his antics are a little out there, and he did it to himself. So, Oklahoma State has fired Mike Gundy after 21 years on the job. Gundy took over for Les Miles in 2005 after Miles left to take the LSU job to replace Nick Saban. He has been at the Cowboys that long. Mike Gundy, during that time, has been very famous for a lot of things. Most notably, his 2007 rant when he said, "I'm a man, I'm 40," because he got mad at a reporter for, by the way, I want to point this out, reporting something accurate about his program and his quarterback situation, reporting something deadly accurate that turned out to be totally true. Mike Gundy was showing himself off that time, trying to pretend like he was backing his players. He wasn't, because that player that he said he was backing transferred at the end of the year and called Mike Gundy fake anyway. However, Mike Gundy is also famous for having some great success at Oklahoma State. multiple top 10 finishes, multiple top 25 finishes, and most notably in 2011, winning the Big 12 finishing ranked number 3, going 12-1, and controversially being left out of the national title game so Alabama could get a rematch with LSU, who beat them earlier in the year, which Alabama won that game and was the launching pad for the college football playoff because the rest of the country was mad that 2 SEC teams were playing for the national title. Most notably, Oklahoma State that year lost to Iowa State in overtime after blowing a 17-point lead on a Friday night in the second half in 2011. That 2011 Friday night Oklahoma State-Iowa State game did more to change college football than any individual game in the history of the sport. Because if Oklahoma State beats Iowa State, they go play LSU for the national title since both teams are undefeated and Alabama has one loss. Oklahoma State gets blown out by LSU in the national title. There's no controversy. No playoff happens. And LSU and Les Miles looks like a legendary coach. Les Miles at that point is a 2-time national championship head coach. And that would be the worst 2-time national champion head coach of all time. But instead, Les Miles had to play Alabama again, got blown out because honestly, LSU wasn't better than Alabama the first time. They got lucky, and that changed everything. Mike Gundy finishes his career 170-90 with numerous top 25 finishes. I believe 3 top 10 finishes, 4 Big 12 championship game berths. Well, 2011, there wasn't a Big 12 title game, but a Big 12 title and 3 other title game berths. Had a lot of success. However, what's not known is that Tennessee made a run at Mike Gundy twice. Tennessee made a run at Mike Gundy in 2012 with Dave Hart after Derek Dooley was fired. There was no interest there. Then they made a run at Mike Gundy again in 2017. And Gundy had just enjoyed 3 straight 10-win seasons at Oklahoma State and 3 straight top 20 finishes. He was at the peak of his career still, looked like an elite coach. And John Curry, for those who don't remember how this happened, John Curry tried to hire Greg Schiano. Tennessee fans nixed the hire. Then John Curry made a bunch of attempts to hire other coaches, including Jeff Brom, Dave Doran, and Mike Leach. And admits that he was one of those coaches he almost landed was Mike Gundy. And he tried to land Mike Gundy. Gundy instead parlayed that to just negotiate a better deal with Oklahoma State, and he stayed at Oklahoma State. Eventually, John Curry got fired because of the whole disastrous coaching search. Philip Fulmer orchestrates a coup. Fulmer takes over and lands Jeremy Pruitt. Now, because Philip Fulmer landed Jeremy Pruitt, and because that became a disaster on its own, many Tennessee fans would say, well, there's no way that coaching search could have gone worse. And I disagree. I think Tennessee is extremely fortunate that they did not land Mike Gundy. Because what happens if Tennessee lands Mike Gundy? Here's what happens. Mike Gundy has early success at Tennessee because Mike Gundy runs a good offense. Let me tell you what derailed Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy was derailed by the fact that he didn't want to go the transfer portal route to add new players because Mike Gundy's entire scheme depends on players developing in the system and learning the offense until it becomes second nature. It's a little bit complex. With that in mind, the transfer portal was always going to make things hard because he's not going to replenish those players. So he's never going to have the quality and the depth that he needed in the transfer portal and NIL era. That's why Mike Gundy has fallen apart, going 3-9 in 2024 and having such a bad start in 2025, losing to Tulsa. But before the NIL and the transfer portal era, he was going to have success at Tennessee. Maybe not elite success because he was in the SEC and not the Big 12, but let's look at what he did at Oklahoma State those 3 years. 7-6 in 2018, 8-5 in 2019, 8-3 in 2020, 12-2 in 2021. Okay. NIL kicks in 2021. Here's what would have happened at Tennessee. Mike Gundy would have lasted beyond when Jeremy Pruitt was fired. John Curry would have lasted beyond when Jeremy Pruitt was fired because John Curry would have landed Mike Gundy. They would have been in this together. And Mike Gundy would have been at Tennessee through COVID, through Jeremy Pruitt, and into the early 2020s. So while you would have had the Jeremy Pruitt disaster, what Tennessee's dealing with, what Oklahoma State's dealing with right now, Tennessee would have been dealing with. And what was the decade of dysfunction would have turned into would have turned into 2 decades of dysfunction because because Mike Gundy would have been like Butch Jones. A few years of success in the middle, but then ending in a miserable failure and flaming out. And Tennessee would be firing him right now and looking for another head coach after firing their 4th straight head coach from Derek Dooley to Butch Jones to Jeremy Pruitt to Mike Gundy, I guess 3rd straight head coach. But still, they'd be looking for another head coach. Instead, the Jeremy Pruitt disaster blew up early enough that they were able to land Danny White as their athletic director and Josh Heupel as their head coach, neither of which they'd have if they had hired Mike Gundy, because he wouldn't have been fired that quickly. So we're going to play a little hot or cold. And it's brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. cityheatandair.com. Now, I'm going to set up a poll question. Closing out this one. With John Mateer hurt, does Oklahoma now have any shot at Tennessee, even if he plays on November the 1st? 81% of you disagree with me. You say yes. 19% say no. Let's say this. How fortunate is Tennessee that they didn't hire, or that Mike Gundy rejected them in 2017? He'd still be here, and he'd still be here, or just be fired. He'd still be here. No Josh Heupel, or no Heupel. How about that? There we go. He'd still be here. No Heupel. Unfortunate. And you guys can vote on this. Couldn't have gone worse anyway. Or how about this? Unfortunate. Went bad anyway. Or unfortunate. He'd be great with Vols, or he'd be great with UT. You guys vote on that. So that's the question. How fortunate is Tennessee that Mike Gundy rejected them in 2017? He'd still be here. No Heupel. Unfortunate. Went bad anyway. Unfortunate. He'd be great with UT. You guys vote on that. I'm going to tell you guys, we're going to play hot or cold. And the question is, how long would Heupel have lasted, or would Mike Gundy have lasted at Tennessee? That's the question. And we're going to go year by year. Are you hot on Tennessee State, on him staying at Tennessee past this year, or cold? So let's get rolling. Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. cityheatandair.com. So let's play this out in our head. Mike Gundy is hired in 2018. Or 2017 by John Curry. I'm not so sure Dave Hart made as much of a move for him in 2012, so we're ignoring that. And had they hired him in 2012, they actually would have had a modicum of success. Okay, so Mike Gundy is hired in 2017. His first year at Tennessee is 2018. Does Tennessee keep Mike Gundy in 2018? I'm hot on that. Yes, they keep Mike Gundy in 2018. He lasts. I mean, there's no amount of bad he could have done if Tennessee kept him in 2018. So with that in mind, yes, Tennessee keeps Mike Gundy in 2018. I don't even think it's a debate. 2019, does he stay in 2019? Well, Jeremy Pruitt stayed through 2019 after losing to Georgia State and BYU to open the season. Mike Gundy is staying in 2019. Absolutely. 2020, COVID-shortened year. Mike Gundy probably has enough players to have learned the offense. Familiarity would be a big deal at that point. I'm hot on Tennessee staying. I'm hot on Mike Gundy staying with Tennessee through 2020, through the COVID shortened season. So 2018, 2019, and 2020, Mike Gundy stays through Tennessee. What about after? What about after the COVID stuff and how long Josh Heupel has stayed at Tennessee? Does Mike Gundy still last? We're going to answer that now. Hot or cold, brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. cityheatandair.com.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
2021. Does Mike Gundy stay at Tennessee past 2021? Yes, because NIL and transfer portal hadn't fully kicked in, and Mike Gundy would have a lot of players familiar with the system in 2021. And I think I'm hot on that because 2021 would have been his elite year at Tennessee. He would have done something special. At Oklahoma State, he went 12-2 and finished in the top 10. I don't know if he finishes in the top 10 at Tennessee, but that would have been that special year at Tennessee where everybody thinks that they've got something with Mike Gundy and they've built something, and he goes and wins 11 games or something like that, and they're like, oh, the program's back. But then 2022 comes around. Does Tennessee still keep him? Yes, and I still think the program's rolling at that point. I don't know who the quarterback is or anything like that, but I bet the program is still rolling. I think Tennessee keeps him in 2022. 2023? Yes, I think Tennessee keeps him in 2023. I think you start to see slippage and the hot seat gets warm. 2024, I think everything falls out. The bottom falls out. And then I'm cold on past 2024. He gets fired in 2024. He doesn't last through 2025 like he did this year. However, if he gets fired in 2024, guess what? Tennessee stuck with no Danny White. They would have been stuck with John Curry for 8 years. Probably no Kim Caldwell. Danny White, John Curry wouldn't have found her. And 2024, not that John Curry's bad, but I mean, that was great timing for them. And so 2024, Tennessee is back in the situation of looking for a new head coach, and they have a first-year head coach this year in 2025, and we don't even know if he would be good. So Mike Gundy, Tennessee was very lucky when he rejected them from Oklahoma State. You guys answered the poll question. How fortunate is Tennessee that Mike Gundy rejected them in 2017? 64% say very. He'd still be here. No Heupel. 29% say unfortunate, went bad anyway, and 7% say unfortunate. He'd be great with UT. I don't think he would have been great with UT, but that's just my thoughts. The show represented by Banks & Jones, Tennessee's trial attorney. Play to win. Why settle? Banks & Jones. I'm by T. Scott Jones, BanksandJones.com. We broadcast live to you every weekday, 10 a.m. Eastern from the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln studio. Ted Russell Ford Lincoln is your home for the finest vehicles in Knoxville, new and used. East Tennessee's largest Ford and Lincoln volume dealer. Hit that like and subscribe button, ring the bell, turn on your notifications. I want to thank you guys all for tuning in today. Have a great rest of your Wednesday with Caleb Calhoun. This has been